Since their early 90s start in Halifax to now, Sloan has been one of the most consistent bands in the country. They've delivered excellent records, high-energy, sing-along shows, and the same original 4 members since the start who continue to democratically share writing duties, which is pretty unheard of. 13 records in, and of course, they decided to do something that they've never done before, which is play their debut record Smeared in Full live. And lucky for you, the shows are here in Toronto, November 29th and 30th. And joining me right now in the studio, Chris Murphy and Patrick Pentland of Sloan. Welcome.
Amazing intro.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I'm excited you guys are here. How are you feeling getting ready for these shows?
I think we're feeling pretty good, but we sort of took a month-long break from rehearsals, it seems.
Oh, it's just hard to organize a bunch of dads together, but
Right.
no, the rehearsals were going good. I was getting nervous, actually. I was like, we're not rehearsing enough, and then the last 2 that we did were excellent, but we need to do more.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we will. And it's not till the end of the month, so as you said.
Now, you guys don't strike me as a nostalgic band because every time I think of Sloan, there's always something cooking, there's always something moving forward, a new record. So what is it like to go all the way back to the start?
Well, it's not to say that we haven't done this kind of thing before. We have done reissue box sets of our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th records, and all of those bought us a tour, and we toured all of those records, and it's been fun. And now we're finally doing our first record, which came out in October '92 in Canada and January '93 in the States, and yeah, we're not going to go on tour with that. So we're trying to make this a special show, which turns out to be 2 shows at the concert hall, and so we're not taking it on tour, but it's loud music. Not that we're not a loud band. We are a loud band, actually, in the present. But this is a lot of guitar effects and digital delay and whatever reverb and all that kind of stuff. But it's also like the drumming on our first record is insane. And that was done by a 24-year-old athlete, and now Andrew is 50. He'll be 57 years old. So
He's still an athlete, though.
But he came. But the last 2 rehearsals we did, like, he was going crazy. He was awesome. Yeah. So it's
there is a little bit of not so much for me, but there is a little bit of like, it's a record from a specific time. It has a specific aesthetic, as he was saying, with effects or whatever, which I use anyway. But so I think there was I don't know if there's reluctance in the past, but to visit that record, there was, I think, a sense that we were immature or we were new to it. And Chris wrote most of the songs on the record. We all did some, but I think they're solid songs, and where we're doing them is not that far off from how we do it anyway, but we are adding some of that element, shoegaze element or whatever, and we have Gregory McDonald, who plays keyboards and various things with us, and he'll be playing with us too, because there's a lot of guitars on that record. And even doing, when we first toured the record, we didn't do all of the songs, and so for some of these songs, it's the first time we're, like Lemon Zinger, for instance, I don't think we did it more than twice live.
not very often.
What to decide, we never really did. I think we did for a while, but it's all a blur because it was a long time ago.
Yeah, so we are an intact band. We're not, getting back together. We didn't break up in '95 and now we're come back. I mean, we did break up in '95, but we
For how long?
Like 6 months.
We broke up at the end of '94, or we decided we were going to do it, or I was like, that's it. And then when we did a couple things in early '95 that we, fulfilling obligations just so as not to be jerks. And then we were just broke, and then it was like, do you want to play a last show in August? So that's August '95. And then we played a show in September '95. And like, we were kind of on basically just dangling carrots because we were poor. But that's, so we were we weren't completely inactive, but we weren't writing that. We didn't write in any of that time. And then we got together in like whatever it was, September, and started making the demos for what became One Chord to Another.
Which was also just going to be like, let's just do one more record and then that'll be it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a posthumous record, our 3rd record. And then the process of becoming a band again was gradual. It's like, well, let's do a video. Well, we got a video grant. Let's do that.
And we had, to say we split up, but we were on a major label in the States. We had a lot of goodwill across the country, having toured for several years, for about 4 or 5 years at that point. And it just seemed like, well, Chris went on tour with his friends, super friends, and they fought too. And then it was just sort of like, well, what are we going to do? Like, just, that's it. We had such opportunities. And of course we're not dumb. So we were like, yeah, we should do this. So when we made the One Chord record, everything just kind of clicked back into, it was basically, we just had a big fight.
Right.
And then we just took off for went to sleep on somebody's couch for 6 months. And then we got back together again for the kids, which were thousands of kids. So, you know.
Going back to Smeared, I am curious about, of course, because you've been doing this for many, many years. When you look back at that time, that snapshot, what does that time, what comes up for you?
I think that for a couple of years I was embarrassed of Smeared because I thought it was so of the time. It was so au courant and in fact maybe behind the times. Like the record that we were really copying Isn't Anything by My Bloody Valentine that came out in 1988. And so we were making it at the end of 91. But the other thing, like this confluence of things that happened, like Nirvana's Nevermind came out and was breaking in September 91, just as we recorded Underwhelmed. And then Loveless by My Bloody Valentine came out in November 91. And then we recorded most of the Smeared in December 91. So we were of the time, but it was an exciting time.
Yeah. It was a lot. I mean, again, as I say, we toured. How long did we tour for that record? 2 years?
We played we that's right. Yeah, we were playing those songs for about 2 years.
And so it started in in Andrew's basement, and within 2 years, a year and a half or something, we were on tour in America on a major label, and I mean, there's video footage that we have of that whole time, and it was just it was very exciting because we were kind of in our own way living a rock star dream. And we got to tour, go everywhere, and meet lots of people, and we still know some of those people. And so yeah, I mean, it wasn't like it was a bit of a slog for us, but it happened pretty quickly for us,
But
as
there
opposed to some of our friends from Toronto, for instance, who had been touring for years and nothing was happening.
Yeah, we didn't have any precedent for the only group that we knew that did anything was a group called the Jellyfish Babies, and we loved them. I personally worshipped them. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but they moved to Toronto and kind of, their dreams were dashed on the rocks of Queen Street, and just playing bars, and they couldn't really make a go of it. And they were great, but we got a real leg up from the whole Nirvana changing, turning the music industry on its ear.
But we also, at least Chris and I, also started before Sloan. We were playing in hardcore punk bands, and so that aesthetic came with us to Smeared and to our live shows. And our live shows were, I mean, lots of people came from that as well. We were of the same age as all the people that we mentioned, Nirvana, but it was listened to hardcore as well. So we were also coming from there. And so that was the, I think that and also before we made Smeared, we were performing some of those songs, but they were quite rock. They were more like how One Chord came out. Like they were a little bit more rock. And so we just added some elements that are of the time, but the songs themselves are solid songs.
So yeah, I did spend a couple of years being kind of embarrassed of it. Like in my mind, I was like, Smeared is really kind of the time, and then what I really want to do is make music that is timeless and can't really be whatever. Did Twice Removed come out in 1980? Did it come out now? I think there's something special about music that is of the time because it does trigger nostalgia, and people are like, oh, I remember that time.
Yeah.
Nevermind, Loveless, Smeared, like it's kind of that time. Whereas Twice Removed, our second record, is kind of like,
no, it's not.
It's of nothing. I mean, you could say it was like Fountains of Wayne, but these other bands that were like loved songwriting craft in the '60s and this or that. But then after a couple of years, I was just like, you know what, Smeared is good. There's good songs on it. Yes, it was of the time, and certainly by now, I'm like, Smeared is awesome. Like the drumming is unbelievable, the songs are good, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but like we were pretty fully formed on the first record. I'm not embarrassed of it at all. It's great.
Patrick, when you listen back, is there something, like Chris brought up the drums, is there something when you listen back in particular, maybe in preparation for these shows, where you're like, oh yeah, like my guitar, or this was...
Well, as I say, it's not that different these days anyway, but yeah, well, what I was happy about was that everybody, like Jay, was game to because there's a lot of noise on that record. That would be something of the time, I guess, would be Sonic Youth-y type detuned noise stuff.
And a quick detail, like it's probably something you're more into still than Jay is now.
That's right.
And you're like, I really hope that Jay is into doing this, and he is.
Yeah, and so he's, as I say, playing out, and Gregory helping too. So it is a wall of sound at times, which I was happy we were able to achieve. And when you come to see the shows, you'll see that. But yeah.
Oh, and speaking of the footage that we were talking about, I don't know if it's out of school to say, but like we've compiled like a little 15-minute video of stuff from 91 to 92 to kind of play before we play.
Nice.
That I think, I mean, have we agreed that we're going to do that?
I think we just did.
Well,
I want to do it.
We've definitely compiled it. Whether or not I think we'll play it. But
It'll either be before the show or it'll be released. We don't want to give it all away, but it'll be released on YouTube.
But I think it'd be a cool way to start the
Yeah.
show with like this little video of us and how young and beautiful we were.
Although it's us rolling around the stage forever, and then we're going to just stand
Yeah, we
there.
won't do that. And then it's going to show
our
how
hips
boring we
sore.
are now.
Can I've always wanted to clarify something because I remember that day, and I'd like to thank my friend's sister, Lisa Campbell, who I stole her smeared CD and I never gave it back.
Nice.
But I remember you being kind of touted as Canada's Nirvana, and I was wondering, obviously you signed to Geffen. That was part of your story with Twice Removed with pen pals and whatnot. But what do you remember? What is the story of that? Was it a review? Was it something that helped you get signed? Was it something?
What was being
The-
compared
The
to?
comparison?
Well,
Or is it
it's
something-
nothing. That's just like a lazy journalism. They're all
Okay.
lazy.
Well, I would say
And
that
they
it's
just come up with
somewhat
something
like Nirvana was neither from LA or New York, and we
part
weren't,
of it was
we
that.
weren't from Toronto,
So they're not-
so
yeah.
we were like people who liked hardcore and punk rock and Black Sabbath and the Beatles and could string a song together, and we were from nowhere. And we did do a lot of like rolling around the ground, you know.
But again, they came from the same scene in their own way as we did. So,
Right.
I mean, it's fair to say to a certain extent we were behind the times a little bit, but we were just kind of almost doing. I mean, we were doing things of the time for sure, but it also came from that aesthetic. And so I mean, it was fun. I didn't like the Nirvana comparison, but only because I knew it would just be a cheap comparison, and then people would either roll their eyes and say they're not Nirvana. And, you know, at some point, I mean, we still get compared to things to this day. It's like, well, we've been together for 30-something years.
Well,
What's this song about? Or who influenced that? It's, how about me? How about the last 30 years I've been doing it?
Within 3 years, we were Canada's Beatles.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
I
the
see.
same
So,
thing.
so
And then
like
it's
there, I mean, there is kind of like a tendency in Canada to be like there's a Canadian version of an international story.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bother me, but like, you know, you sort of, I mean, I think the Nirvana comparison was fair.
Oh, and it's better than being compared to somebody else. Like I wasn't
Don't get
embarrassed
specific.
I wasn't
Right.
embarrassed by Nirvana comparisons at all. It was just
And we got signed to Geffen, which was Nirvana's label, so it wasn't like we were someone else, some other label's version of
Yeah.
Nirvana. We got to sort of we didn't really hang out with Nirvana, but like, you know, we got to be on the best label in the world. Like it was a pretty exciting
Yeah.
time. We were basically, sometimes I'd think about, you know, kids who have the hockey dream. It's like, you know, your kid is not gonna make the NHL. It's impossible. So like we in the keeping with that analogy, we were in the NHL for like 2 seasons, and ever since we've been playing hockey in Germany. If you
except
follow.
we never go to Germany.
You guys need to go to Germany.
yeah.
Guys, before we get to some songs, because you are going to play a couple tracks, I was wondering about the songs that are your favorites off the record, or the songs when you listen back and you think about perhaps your history with the record, which is different than the listeners. What connects with you most?
Well, the song I always come back to is Marcus Said. I like that a lot. It's got a lot of it's a good song, and then Jennifer Pierce sings on it. But there's also I don't know. I mean,
In the first place, it was kind of my band to share because I knew Patrick, I knew Jay, I knew Andrew. And so, you know, I forced those guys to deal with each other still. And, and so most of the songs were mine, or most of them were kind of figured out before we even got started. But then Patrick had Sugar Tune, and Andrew kind of wrote 500 Up, and Patrick sang it. And then Andrew had Median Strip, and Patrick he did the middle part, and Jay had 2 songs as well. Like I fantasized about being the band that we became, this sort of like 4-headed thing. And you know, the first record, we are all represented, and all that stuff, and we were sharing equally even then. But you know, it was mostly fully formed. And in terms of individual songs, like, I think Underwhelmed is pretty great. Like, it's just a goofy one-trick musical pony. Like, it's repetitive, it's long, but like Andrew's drumming is fantastic. It's basically a joke factory if you go through it line by line. And allow me, I will. No, I won't do it. But like, it's pretty funny, and but it's not just goofy. You know, I'm friends with all the Bare Naked Ladies guys, but I'm quite good friends with Stephen Page, and like I am basically making constantly jokes, but I have Patrick in the band being cool. Andrew looks like an Adonis. Like, you know, I'm a goofball, but I get to be in a cool band.
Did you?
I get to be in a cool band. Oh, Bare Naked Ladies are, you know, kind of goofball, but and I think they did very well for themselves.
They're fine.
But anyway, I'm happy to have a cool band, so I can be basically as goofy as I want and still be cool.
I'm excited that the show's going to start with Underwhelmed, of course. Just like that has the greatest intro to a record. I think about albums that have a solid start.
Can I say something about that? I know you're
Yeah.
probably trying to wrap up. When we recorded Underwhelmed, we did all the drums, and then I went to sing it, and I was like, "This,
We don't. Yeah.
this is this is done wrong. Like it's not long enough." So we had to add that whole intro. We had to flip the tape and then add that sound, and I had to count. Like before it starts to kind of kick in, it was supposed to kick in with like she was underwhelmed, but the words were set in stone. So and we recorded it wrong, and we had already packed up or whatever. So we had to it was an afterthought to make that whole intro, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
But that was almost didn't happen because it wasn't planned.
Like
at
these
all.
days, it would be on computer. We just cut the
Yeah,
front part and move it over. Like we do that often.
Yeah.
And but we had to do what you had to do, and oftentimes cool things come out of mistakes, you know,
But I
or
think,
trying to deal with mistakes.
But I think that if we go from this cool little video we made and then we start in with that sound, like I think people are going to go nuts. So
there's a few tickets left.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
For
the
29th.
29th.
For
the
the
30th is
first
sold.
one.
Yeah.
Second one is sold out. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll both be sold out by the time the show comes around.
Well, that's what we're
think
worried
so,
about.
too.
That's why we're here, because we want to make sure people get tickets, because there aren't that many left.
yeah.
So we're- you know.
Have you? The concert hall was around in the 90s, and it had maybe about
Yeah.
20 years where it was no longer a venue.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, where was your first show in Toronto? Smeared era.
It would have been the Drake Hotel, right?
It was called 1150 Queen.
Yeah.
It was the basement of the Drake. It's that building. It wasn't nice like that. It was just like crappy.
But yeah, we played the concert hall a few times, but I think it was on one chord.
we played the concert hall in '97.
Mm-hmm.
We played at the Drake, and then the next time through, we played Lee's. We played Lee's Palace twice.
We played Rivoli.
We played the Rivoli. We opened for Jaw Wobble
At the
at the Phoenix, and that was probably it for Smeared.
Did you say Opera House?
Oh yeah, we
Opera
played the
House
Opera
was our
House. That was
last-
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
We played a lot, you know.
Amazing.
And then the thing is, we have this is now over time, but we have a live record called Four Nights at the Palais Royale, but it was supposed to be at the concert hall. And Mike Bullard had his show going on, and we played there. So we were like, we'd really like to do this live record here because we had good shows for one chord. And they were like, yeah, well, we'll be on hiatus, so don't worry about it. Nothing will be set up and whatever. And then about 3 weeks before we were supposed to do it, we went in to just check out the venue, and all they'd done was push the couch to the back and the table, the chair, you know what I mean? Like they didn't move anything. And we were like, no, it's supposed to be like empty. And they're like, oh, we can't do that. And so we were like, what the hell are we going to do? And then we found this rundown place called the Palais Royale, and that's where we did it. And then a few years later, it got refurbished. I'm not saying we were responsible for it being popular and refurbished.
Maybe. Well, you're back at it. Concert hall, end of November, 2 shows, 29th and 30th. Before we go, let's play some, and by let's, I'm not going to include myself, but can you guys play?
You can sing along. We are going to play 2 songs.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say is that, yes, we're going to play these 2 songs. They're going to be awesome. But we are also, working on a new record. So we're not purely a heritage act. So we have a new record that we will hopefully finish by September.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Or in time to
September.
be released in September.
I was like, September, okay.
I just mean we're still at it. I just want people
you
to
never
know.
Amazing. Well, what are you going to get to? When it comes to this record, what 2 songs have you picked?
Well, let's start.
2 we mentioned,
Let's start with Underwhelmed, and then we'll end with Marcus Said. Okay, here we go.
Oh, I also did want to bring up Lemonzinger when I was listening back. I know I brought it up really quickly, but it does sound a little bit like it could be a precursor to The Good in Everyone.
No, well,
And is that
that one's written by Jay,
Mhm.
and I never put that together till you just said it. So no, it was Good in Everyone is a combination of New York and Submission by the Pistols, and the intro that I had, which Chris took, we put another one on, was supposed to be My Generation by The Who. So it's really just those 2 songs. But don't tell Johnny Rotten because he'll sue us.
Or the Damned, like the
Or the Damned,
It's a New Rose. Yeah.
The intro is like New Rose by The Damned.
Okay,
Doesn't
noted.
matter.
Just had a little, my songs were crossing in my brain for that first
Well,
30
it's
seconds.
interesting you say that. And I love that song, and we never really did it live, and now we're going to do it with this.
No, it kicks ass. It's
yeah,
great.
it's very
Yeah.
good. It should have been a single.
Speaking of good intros as well, Take It In has a stellar intro. There's something about the build on that one.
It's very sensual, very sexy.